Welcome to another episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. So, guys, you do recognize my voice, I hope, after 60 episodes or what? It is always Rosie here, and as I've said many times, this is just a group of students and young professionals, and we are always very interested in whatever has to do with technology and, yes, its regulation. And today, sometimes, we also talk about, well, how technology comes into life and how it's protected. So, I am joined by my colleague. Finally, see you again, Giacomo. Welcome.
Hi, Rosie. Thank you. Really happy to be here.
Great to see you. And I am told I will struggle with this name. So I will make my best effort. Hello, Mads Viborg Jørgensen. How are you?
Hi, Rosalia. Great to meet you. Big fan of the podcast. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Mads. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Patno.com and have some student history of my own. I used to study computer science, and while I was doing that, I was also the president of within the world's largest youth association for young scientists and engineers, based here in Copenhagen, Denmark. Which was a very learning experience. I was part of managing 500 volunteers, and that's one of the reasons I came into this whole area of intellectual property and legal tech. So while I was doing this at first 18 years old, I got to meet some of the smartest people I've met today. Very humbling for me going into kind of the scientific world myself. So I started getting into leadership and entrepreneurship. So while I was studying, I got the opportunity to work directly under a bank executive and build a AI product within the company called Danske Bank, and did that for a few years and knew immediately when I then graduated in parallel that I wanted to found my own company. And going out and going back to some of these smart people I used to volunteer with, and talking with other people in the innovation space, which my co-founder has been working within for many years as a serial inventor and entrepreneur. We just got so many recommendations to help people with patents and intellectual property because they thought it was one of the most important things for them. And yet, this whole industry they felt like had not really been disrupted or been moved very far on the technological side. So I a bit naively thought I could build an amazing product in 12, 18 months to make something very cool on the legal tech side. But now I'm here 7 years in, and we're still building an amazing product, but have many years ahead of building something cool.
After this explanation that is brilliant, I would go immediately into the business. As you said, you're working in the field of patents and intellectual property. So, from your perspective, what are the most significant changes through which AI is reshaping the intellectual property landscape today?
I think there are two things happening. So the first thing is services like renewals, like we work in at patmo.com, and I've been spending so much time creating technology for. They're going away from IP lawyers usually taking this work on to now being a service that you can fully automate. AI is a big part of that in making that possible, but ultimately speaking, the core software is actually very rigid. Like it has to be 100% correct all of the time, which is still not achievable by AI. But the support of AI to be able to build that product is one way innovating this area. But I think this is just a small thing, and that's where we're started as a company. The big change AI is doing right now is making people that work with IP, whether that's inside companies or at IP law firms or law firms, they're making them so much more efficient if they're using these technologies correctly, which is causing a very interesting change in the industry. I think just making these people more efficient, of course, is a drastic change. But I think my personal take of what's going to happen in the industry and what generally is happening with legal tech is that most people, they don't really want to talk with their law firm or their IP law firm. They do it because they create so much value and they're so important to them. But they would much rather just put something into like an AI model and ask, hey, is this possible? Can I do this? And then I get a quick opinion. And if the model says, yes, you can do it, I'm very sure, then they want to go to their lawyer instead of like them writing the model saying that's absolutely not possible. This is never going to happen. Then they save those, 5, 10 inquiries to their law firm. And that's going to make everyone in the R&D teams, in the teams that work with IP and legal across the entire company so much more efficient and going to cost so much more innovation around the world, which I'm very excited about.
And following up on this, how is AI being used to streamline processes like patent searches, novelty assessments, and, for example, portfolio management? Do you have some, I don't know, specific examples that could help us understand better what is going on and also for our listeners?
Yeah, of course. So when you get an idea and you want to explore whether that's patentable, you do these novelty searches, figuring out is this even patentable or not. And there are a ton of cool companies. I'm very connected with a company based here in Europe called IP Rally, for example, that is very focused in this space. And what they're doing is they're providing a platform for anyone actually, but I think their target audience is larger companies who are looking to figure out if their new inventions is patentable or not. So I think some companies are already with that tool going as far as only using that and not even using experts to see if their idea has novelty or not. But a lot of companies are then once again using it to streamline and make their processes so efficient that, before going to their law firm and making sure with 1,000% certainty that it makes sense going further with applying for getting this patent at the patent authorities, then they, do these checks with more and more ideas. So the volume of these checks they can increase has been, the possibility has increased by, 100 or 1,000-fold. And they get so quick dynamic feedback in the R&D teams and across the organizations that they don't need to go to their law firm expert every single time.
In terms of type of technology, we say AI, but AI means so much, and even the European Union is not too sure about the definition of AI system model and everything else. What kind of AI are we dealing with? I know that it's a very technical question, but I can assure you we also have tech people listening to this podcast.
Of course. Well, a lot of this technology is, of course, built confidentially in the company, so I cannot say everything with full certainty. But I think the technology that is most interesting for building and solving very complicated problems within IP is self-built AI software. So unlike many startups in the space building, just on top of these new LLM models out there and not really building AI themselves, that's not a lot of what we're seeing. People are, of course, still using that, but haven't seen many IP specific softwares that are doing that. I think the hardcore softwares like the IP-REL I just mentioned for novelty searches, they are building their own like multimodal models that are looking at so many different data sets and are combining different AI technologies within one product to give the best possible service. How we are using it internally in my company is that we've tried to build an AI product to audit our own software to make sure that our core software renewing patents is as best as possible so that we catch mistakes early on if there are any.
Oh, and talking about catching mistakes, I am a very sloppy person sometimes. I am very untidy in a terrible way. And I do make a lot of mistakes, and I'm thinking of when the lawyer, the person gets kind of like this cyborg um medal with the AI. Like, how do you ensure that for example, lawyers and in general IP experts are trained well enough to have to do with all of this AI, which is incredible, but it's also like it sounds very difficult to understand for someone who doesn't come from an engineering background.
Oh, for sure. I think the further we get into this, the better user experience are being created. We're very focused in our company in creating a very good and easy experience where you don't need to read complicated guidebooks to work with the software that I would be working with day to day if I needed to get renewals done. So I think the same goes for these other products. They're trying to make the user experience as easy as possible. I think the more difficult training and what I would fear happening in the industry is that people get so addicted to or dependent on these products and services that they forget about how difficult these things actually are. Like a wrong, how do you say, assessment on the novelty of an idea and whether it's patentable might mean that you don't go down that route, even though it was actually the right route to go down, patenting it. In our company, and that's why we don't use AI as a core thing. If we make the wrong decision on like when is the right time to renew a patent, $1 billion patentable idea might get lost and now it's public domain. Everything is super, super critical. So having these ultimate human experts to validate both the software and the AI, but also in the case where it's an AI doing the entire service or product, you need that human element in the end if you want to be absolutely sure that you're getting the right kind of software experience within IP.
And in your view, in what ways can AI be both a challenge? We can think, for example, of copyright issues, and also at the same time a solution, for example, for infringement detection, for managing intellectual property rights.
Yeah, of course. So I think what I'm seeing is that especially a lot of big companies, but not as far enough in smaller and medium-sized companies and law firms, is that they're starting to use these kind of in-house models on top of how do you say, the different AI softwares you can get. Of course, it's hard to do it with a specific product that have built their own AI service, but when you're working with a large language model like Claude or OpenAI, as ChatGPT, it's if you're using those products just directly in your browser, you are just giving away copyright for whatever you're pasting in there, and that's of course a huge challenge for confidentiality and your IP as a company. So I think what I'm seeing the largest companies in the world doing is using, how do you say, providers that remove that step. So they're using kind of an in-house version of these technologies so they don't fall behind by not using them at all, but also so they don't give away their IP in the process of using them. Most of my network working with these large corporations, they're banned to use, just ChatGPT in the browser for work. They have to use the internal version. And I think that's where the world is going more and more on the business side. I think what's very cool about especially copyrights and infringement protection is kind of the same thing that I mentioned earlier with the scale of how much more you can do with fewer people. So with something like infringement, these technologies, whether it's old traditional software, but especially now with AI that can grab so fast and broad, you can catch so many more things you wouldn't be able to do with human resources. Like you cannot hire like 4,000 people to only work on infringement for your company. No one can afford that. But these technologies can go to some weird edge of the internet and find some small infringement that you would never have found yourself. And then once again, ultimately, probably some human expert needs to verify everything, but your volume just increases so broadly that to a level that you have never been able to achieve before. And it severely increases kind of the protection of your IP as a company once you start fully embracing these tools and as they get better and better every single week, month, as they are these days.
Talking a bit about that human expert, today I'm feeling very human. I'm actually asking everything about humans. Do you see the human expert, the person that needs to kind of like monitor all the AI detections and kind of see whether they actually work or not at the end? Do you see them trusting the process? Do you see them trusting the AI? Or do you see them being a bit more kind of, yes, but are we sure? Like, do you think they are overworking because they don't trust the AI, for example?
Well, I think these AI models are good at different things. So there are some things where they're not there yet, but I think things are changing so quickly. We started working with a lot of AI products many years ago in our company, and when we initially started working with them, they were horrible. It was just a waste of our time. But we've tried to make a practice of checking in with the progress very frequently, because what might lose you time today because they're just, hallucinating some sort of uh, bad prediction of what you need to get done today might be actually better than or close to as good as you tomorrow. So it's common practice in a lot of different legal companies that you use younger junior people to do the hard legwork for you. And I think what I'm starting to see is that a lot of these models are getting to that level. So you should do things with caution, like you wouldn't, give your most important case with your largest customer solely, fully responsibly to one of your junior guys that started last week. You wouldn't do that with the AI models as they are right now. but you absolutely have to keep in check with how they're progressing all the time to make sure you actually understand the power of these models. And I've even seen them, they launch a new version and now it's worse than they were last week, just because they're better overall, but just specifically for what you're doing, they got bad, or worse at least. So I think it's so important to keep in check and kind of do quality assurance. I think how most companies should think about this is that uh, most people within a company have just kind of gotten a new army of employees. And just like any employee, you need to make sure that they're performing and that they're living up to the quality and the standard you have as a company. And if you don't do that, then you might as well not use these tools, because at one point you'll potentially make a risk or a mistake so big that it wouldn't have been worth saving the time you got it there. But if you do it correctly, you can just create so much more value for yourselves or your customers.
Um, One last question before the last question. You said that you worked a lot as a student in student organizations and you've been volunteering loads. Now, put yourself, I am a student. So imagine you were me and imagine you wanted to start your career and you think that patent litigation and in general the patent framework is a very, very interesting sector for you to work in. And yet you listen to this podcast and you find out that there are armies of AI tools that make the process much quicker, but also mean that there's less need for a young person who's just been hired and probably is set down to a very kind of like repetitive work, so to learn the job. So I'm not saying that AI should be stopped so that young students can actually find a job in the future or train in their job. I'm asking you to give us an advice. What do you think we should train on and we should be ready to face so that, you know, the type of work we're offering doesn't become obsolete, considering that the AI revolution is now a necessity for companies?
Yeah, I think this revolution, as you say, I agree with that. It is happening across any industry. I think specifically a lot of interesting things are happening within the legal space and legal tech space, because uh, people are starting to rely on these tools instead of going to their law firm or IP law firm as they used to a different degree than rather than going to their boss as you might do in other industries. So I think the revolution is not going to slow down. Like even if it slows down here in Europe, it will just continue to speed up in other countries around the world. So I personally think you have to look at it from an opportunistic perspective, no matter where you are. And my experience is that most companies around the world, they're way too slow at adapting at these tools. So if you really jump in with both legs and become an expert in using these tools, I actually think that you could, you know, use that opportunity to become the first partner ever in some sort of legal firm, or get a lot more responsibility, be the higher performer compared to your new colleagues in the first job. So I think no matter what area you're working in, you just have to be the new expert in these tools and keep check with everything, because I think even many months, many years from now, when people who are studying at the moment would have graduated, I think most companies will still be so behind, and it's going to be painfully obvious in these larger companies that are not as quickly to adapt that innovation. So you coming in, giving that push will be a great opportunity for you and the company. I think historically, when I graduated and had my first job in the banking industry, I could do with my software experience, which was already a huge revolution for them. Like very concretely, on my first day of my job, I saved the company around 200,000 euros a year on my first day just with software. Uh, these type of things is just gonna be more and more crazy in the future. So if you master these tools, the amount of value you can create compared to what someone like I could when I had my first job, it's just gonna be tremendous. And thinking more holistically, not about just completing a job, but how can I create value for a company? How can I use these tools to not just, execute on this specific task I got from my boss better, but how can I use these tools to just, innovate and improve the performance of a company. I think a lot of different people are thinking a lot about that. And I know with me kind of coming from the startup scale-up industry and speaking with a lot of interested investors all the time, that there's right now kind of a boom from investors to actually look into large companies and use AI to boost those companies because they have a lot of customer bases, they have a big foundation, and if they manage to apply these tools correctly, they can actually start to maybe even compete a little bit better with the startups of the world because they don't need as large of a technology team because they get much of it provided through these tools.
Wow. I'm really excited to start learning a bit more about all of this. So, I mean, for all of our listeners, guys, you've heard this. You should start going and learning about AI and how it works. But for anyone who's not looking for a job, I'm going to ask you, Matt, it's your moment. You have 1 minute. You can pitch your company. Do it as best as you can. You go.
I can always pitch my company for anyone, but I think what I more care about is our vision. So our company was founded to help some of the smartest people in the world to make a difference. And I think one of the core foundations we have is that we want to just simply help disrupt and innovate the life cycle from someone gets an amazing idea until they can get protection of it. With all of these new tools coming out to help support people work more efficiently, it's going to be so important that you have the rights to their ideas and inventions. And the barrier to getting that is just way too expensive and way too complicated at the moment. So we want to create an amazing company that takes people from the moment they get their idea until they have protection as fast, cheap, and easy as possible so they can focus their time and energy with modern technology and solving the most important problems. And that's what we've started doing with building patnode.com. But at some point, we'll probably change our name and do something much broader and much more amazing within the IP industry. And that's what makes me and the team excited about what we're building.
Oh, and we want the exclusive on Legal for Tech whenever you make this big change from pattern.com to the infinite and beyond. You have to promise me.
Will do.
Thank you so much. So, this was all for this episode of Legal for Tech, the podcast. I shall thank my colleague Giacomo for joining me today and helping me as always.
Thank you to you, Rosie.
And let's both thank our great guest and the CEO and founder of patent.com and beyond, as we saw, Mads Viborg Jørgensen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.